Hi everyone, welcome back to AP Psychology with me, Miss Baines, your teacher, where you can take advantage of being able to pause and rewind me as I deliver you our latest content. So go ahead and grab those markers, get yourself nice and comfy, and of course, don't forget those ever important binder notes that go in lockstep order with this video called Unit 7, Video 7, Stress and Coping with Stress. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, welcome back. So we're dealing with stress here, both the experiencing of stress and the coping with stress. And that's what the standards are here on our learning targets today. We're also going to cover the phases of stress as defined by Hans Seal, and then what recommendations there are according to the research on how to cope with stress. Okay, let's talk about stress. What is stress? Stress is the psychological states that cause physical illness. So stress is any circumstance, either real or imagined, that threatens our well-being. And over time, if we have severe stress, what happens? It impairs our ability to really deal with the stress or cope with the stress. So we need to know the difference between stressor and stress. So a stressor is the thing that causes the stress, okay? So we need to know the difference between stressor and stress. So a stressor is the thing that causes the stress, okay? The stimulus, it's something that demands adaptation. So something that demands you to change, right? You should do something to overcome that stimulus. Stress is the physical and mental changes that occur in response to that stressor, okay? So the stressor or the stimulus, the stress is the response to the stressor or the stimulus. The stress response, first and most importantly, is the cognitive appraisal. So first we need to be able to identify that there is some sort of threat, and we need to figure out a way to cope with that threat, okay? The way we go about relieving stress is different for every single person. And the next piece is the physiological response to stress. So that is our body's reaction to a stimulus. Our subjective feelings are those emotions that we are feeling in regards to a particular stressor or behavior. It's the outward thing that we observe, the observable actions that are taken because of the stressor. Okay, so the observable actions that are taken because of the stress, so our physiological responses, it's like the body's internal response, and the behavior is the outward response. Okay, so again, stress is not just a stimulus or a response, it is the process by which we appraise. An event can be stressful or it can be arousing. It can cause you to focus, right? So let's think about, say, a math test. Okay, so if a math test is stressful, right, you can appraise it and you can think about it in two different ways. You can think about it as a threat, like, yikes, I can't do this math. Oh my God, I don't even know what the teacher's talking about. And then you're going to have your stress response. Now you're distracted because all you can think about is how you don't know what you're doing. If you see it as sort of a challenge, like, okay, I have to get to work, I have to do this, and then you become focused, right? So stress can either cause a distraction because you're not able to handle it, or it can cause you to really get focused and hone in on whatever it is that's giving you the stress so that you can find a way over it, okay? So when stress is short-lived and taken as a challenge, right, these can have positive effects, right? However, if over time that stress becomes, like kind of stays there, it becomes threatening. Now it can become harmful again. It's all how we appraise it and how long that stressor actually lasts. Different types of stressors that we're going to talk about: catastrophic events, life changes, chronic stressors, and daily hassles. I'm going to talk about each one of these, and I want you to come up with some examples to put into your notes for each one of these 4 different types of stressors. And then I want you to think about them in your own life. So the first one up is catastrophic events. They are sudden, unexpected, potentially life-threatening experiences, right? Traumatic events. So think of an example in your own life or something that you have experienced, or you've noticed a friend or a family member who has experienced something really traumatic. That could be something like going to war, or getting cancer, or losing a child, something like that, okay? These kinds of catastrophic events are one of the types. Okay, next up are life changes or strange. This is when our life circumstances create demands which people might have to adjust for. So for me, a life change would be having my daughter being born, okay? Even though it's a happy event, it caused a lot of stress in my life. It was a huge change in my life from just having a relationship with my husband and going about our daily life and learning to save money and get our careers in order. When suddenly I became pregnant, that became the focus, and a very stressful focus, of an entire life event changing. I think I've also shared with you that happened about the same time when my mom came, the mom who raised me, came to help me take care of my daughter. She ended up suffering a heart attack and dying, which in one moment I was feeling the stress of having a baby, which is happy and new and exciting, but also losing my mother in the same moment. So within a 2-week period, I was feeling 2 out of the 4 of these types of stressful events, just for sake of argument, so that you can see like that these things are equal but different. Most people experience them at different times in their life. In my particular example, they were happening almost simultaneously. Next up are the chronic stressors. These are the ones that are continued over a long period of time. Okay, so you might have a job that could be a chronic stressor, maybe a pilot or something like that, somebody who risks their life every day and puts a lot of work and puts their life on the line, right? Our daily hassles. These are the little irritations and pressures and annoyances that might not be significant alone, but when you kind of line them up, another type of stress response would be a whole new class to teach, right? A college level class. It made my daily, day-to-day stressors so much higher for the last 2 years, because I'm constantly not only trying to put the content out for you guys to understand, I'm learning it myself. Okay, so these chronic stressors last over a long period of time. You have to get a lot done. The daily hassles are the irritations, pressures, annoyances that you might be on a sports team. You might also belong to a club. You might have 3 AP classes along with the other 5 classes that you have to complete. You might be applying for colleges and taking the SATs and trying to figure out where you want to go to school, right? These are all day-to-day, long-term, over the period of your 11th and 12th year of high school stressors. Let's talk a little bit about our stress response system. We've talked about this for a little bit when we were back in our biology unit, right? So it should be a little bit of a review. Cannon and Bard proposed that our stress response was a fight or flight response, where epinephrine or norepinephrine from our adrenal glands are flowing out, and this increases our heart rate and respiration rates while it mobilizes our sugar, our glucose, and our fat, and our pain is being taken care of. So the sympathetic nervous system, right? All of those things that we talked about when you were dealing with the sympathetic nervous system gears up for all that fight or flight. That's what's happening when we encounter stress. Our hypothalamus and our pituitary gland also respond to stress, right? They trigger the outer adrenal glands to secrete cortisol, and cortisol is our stress hormone. Remember, hormones are longer lasting in our body than neurotransmitters. So these are going to give you some of the same kind of sympathetic nervous system reactions over a long period of time, okay? So the sympathetic nervous system are those neurotransmitters that are immediate, right? They're fast-acting stress response systems. But then afterwards, now we have to deal with our hormones that come in that are slow stress responses that are continuing, right? The feelings over a long period of time. So general adaptation syndrome is our idea of how we respond to the stress with our body's reaction to stress. So Hans Seeley came up with this idea, and what he said was that stress of any kind has a similar response inside of our body. We have 3 phases that we go through. The first phase is our alarm reaction. This is our fight or flight response. It releases those neurotransmitters and those hormones, and now we're dealing with the immediate stressful situation. If this stressor persists, meaning the stimuli continues, then there will be an initial adaptive reaction. But if that stressor remains, if the stressor persists over a longer period of time, now we become distrusted, right? It depletes our resources. It depletes our energy because our body is so worked up. If we're using all that fat, if we're using all that glucose and the energy that our body is breathing really rapidly and our heart is pumping really fast, now we can cause high blood pressure. Our immune system can deteriorate and we can get fatty deposits in our blood vessels and then ulcers in our stomach, right? With the stress. And obviously the snake situation is a shorter period of time, but if this stressor is lasting over a very long time, we have issues in our body that are in a constant state of arousal. The next one is resistance. So if a stressor persists, but it's not as strong, then we begin to rebound, right? Our body comes back outwardly and our body appears to be gaining the advantage. Right? So we can kind of calm ourselves down, we resist the stressor, or maybe we get really focused inwardly on the inside of our body, which is trying to restore that homeostasis. Yet we're still a little bit roused up, okay? We're still trying to deal with the stress that's left over, but it's kind of like coming back down, right? The resistance only applies to that original stressor, okay? So if we're really stressed out about, say, the AP exam that's coming up in May, if another thing gets added on top of that, say a big game, or maybe you're taking a second or third AP exam, right? So you have one stressor topped on top of another stressor and another stressor. And all the tests are taking place around the same time of year. And now not only are you studying for AP Push and AP Psychology, maybe you're taking Calc AB as well, or AP Lang, or AP Bio, and you're studying for the physics exam and you're taking a higher level English, and now your defenses are so depleted that we might not even be able to respond to the second one, okay? So our body is so focused on dealing with the AP test that we can't even focus on anything else. And then finally, stage 3 is exhaustion. If resistance fails to relieve the stress, meaning we cannot come down from the stressful event, these systems of alarm reappear, and then we have a more powerful autonomic nervous system response that comes in with the sympathetic nervous system. It overcompensates the body, which has already used up so much energy to deal with the original stressor, and now our body is depleted. It's exhausted, and eventually, if the stressor is large enough, we die because our body has no more to get. Usually there are some warning signs before we die, right? You'll have a heart attack, your arteries will get all clogged up, you'll have excessive colds or flus. And this is why I say around exam time, when you're really, really stressed, you might feel super crappy, right? You might get a cold or a flu because your body is breaking down over the stressors that you have. You might get a headache. You might get a cold. You might get allergies on top of it because it's the spring, okay? Your mental processes like worry affect your immune system. Right? The human immune system has evolved to deal with short-term stressors. However, if you're also dealing with long-term stressors and they persist, you're going to start to break down in your body. It's going to turn on itself because there's nothing to really fight off the infection. And you often get sicker when you are stressed out. It's a variety of health illnesses like we've talked about before: heart attacks, lower immune system, sicknesses. But what happens is when we are stressed, if we make healthy choices, which are harder to do, right? When we're in a rush and on the run, we make unhealthy choices. You're going to drink your coffee to stay up all night. You're going to get caffeine. You're going to smoke your cigarettes. You're going to do some kind of drug to keep you awake longer, right? Like Adderall or something like that. Lots of people use these things as crutches. And then you might not be getting sleep at night, so you're going to turn to fast food because you're in a rush and you don't have time to cook a nice healthy meal or to eat like a really good chopped up salad, right? We persist in the stress, and then our stress hormones of cortisol causes long-term effects like heart disease, immune suppression, autonomic nervous system effects like high blood pressure, headaches, migraines. These are all consequences that can be related to long-term stress. Okay? Let's talk about personality types. Some of us have what we call a type A personality. This is a person who is so competitive. They are hard driving, impatient, verbally aggressive, anger prone. They become stressed out super quickly. In most cases, type B people are sort of more easygoing and relaxed. People seem to deal with stress okay. They don't really get anxious about anything. They kind of let it go, let it fly. My guy in my life is much more of a type B. He is super chill, talk me down, and my fuse is not as short when he is talking to me, which is why we're an incredibly good match for each other, right? If you have two type A's together, you're at each other's necks all the time. If you have a type A and a type B together, you're really bouncing off of each other, where one is super aggravated all the time and the other one is super good at bringing the other person down and relaxing. Okay, so type A and type people deal differently with stress, and it's kind of the part that comes in when we're alleviating stress. There are two different ways that we can go about coping with it. The first way is called problem-focused coping. This is where we're going to change events in our lives that cause the stress. Therefore, we're not going to have the stress in the future. For example, if your car keeps breaking down, causing you distress, you're going to go out and try to find a way to buy a new car. I call this man coping, because men always come in and they want to just fix the situation, and you're all stressed out and freaking out, and Eric will come in and be like, why don't we just buy a new car? And I'm thinking, what? What are you talking about? How are we going to do that right now? And he just fixes it. Okay, the emotion-focused coping, right? I'm all emotional. I'm in this terrible situation. I want to cry about it. I want to freak out. I want to pull my hair. I get all emotional, and you want to vent, or you want to talk about it and break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, which causes you stress. So then you go to your friends, right? You want to have the emotion-focused fix. You want to fix the situation that caused the stress, and you're going to deal with your own emotions because you can't fix the situation. So that's all I've got for you tonight. Bye now.